Hello! Today we will apply a digital discovery tool to a concrete case, a transformation to data-driven service business. We do it by simulating a management team meeting. The meeting has been called to kick off the transformation. Video consists of three parts, plus short introducing and concluding parts. In the first part, management team considers the way data and technology can be used for productivity gains in various business domains. The domains cover customer value, customer experience, and operational efficiency. In the second part, the simulated management team considers the new capabilities needed to make the transformation happen. And in the third and final part, the meeting then considers and comes up with strategic questions. The questions are needed to prioritize subsequent actions and investments. The questions are also needed to frame the leadership challenge presented by the transformation. So with that, let's start transforming the business.
Digital discovery is a tool and a method for business renewal. This time we'll apply DD tool to a very special case. A traditional B2B product company transforming itself to data-driven service business. For the company, services represent a new way to create and capture customer value. Time for action is now as competition, old and new, is moving into companies' markets and accounts. At the same time, technology and data are shifting customer expectations. Differentiation with products alone has become increasingly difficult, and the pressure on margins is getting heavy. But changing the legacy product-oriented operating model to data and services-based value creation calls for complete business transformation. However, the management team has decided to meet the challenge head-on. Transformation is about to be kicked off in the management team meeting. Meeting agenda is set to handle three topics in this order: technology and data-driven productivity improvements, identification of current capability gaps, drafting strategic questions for focused actions and investments. This is the management team participating in the discussion. The first letter of each name indicates the role. For example, David represents development, correspondingly Mary represents marketing. Many questions call for services representation, but for this simulation that role has not yet been filled. Facing the transformation challenge, management team members are not passive victims, but active contributors and leaders. With to-the-point questions, they take the responsibility and demonstrate leadership mindset. Digital discovery tool provides the framework for management team discussion. From the digital discovery introduction video, you may recall that technology is about moving the productivity frontier in the three business domains: customer value, customer experience, and operational efficiency. To investigate data-based value and potential, the management team will now focus on the two most interesting technology verticals: analytics and AI, and Internet of Things. Let's get started. Management team starts the discussion from customer value by looking into technology and data-driven gains on products and services. As the meeting kicks off, the team agrees to focus on questions while resisting the temptation to find answers in the first go. They determine that right now the highest priority is to identify relevant questions. To save time, the team also agrees to handle only the highest impact questions in this meeting. They agree to continue with additional questions and details in a later session. The team also decides not to consider competitive landscape this time. They do recognize the importance of securing BCRs and identifying sources for CA. However, to save time, these two are to be handled in a later meeting. After these housekeeping topics, they dive into the actual business matters. Mary starts with customer perspective. With regards to services, how do we know what customers truly value and want? How well we know our customers, their processes and their business? What does our domain expertise, our experience and actual customer data tell us? And how could we utilize that knowledge and data in designing future services? Peter starts drafting product roadmap in his mind by asking the obvious question. What is it that we need to do more in our products to boost service business? What is the data we need to design better products? Sam enters strategy domain by stating, there must be a way to beat service-only competition with installed base and strong product portfolio. Bob voices the early conclusions shared by everybody. To do well in service business, our products need to adapt and data is to be used for future product and service design. The meeting proceeds to IoT. Bob starts from the top. IoT is good for enabling preventive maintenance service, but what would that actually give to our customers? And how it would impact the customer relationship? Mary maps product usage data onto value, user experience, and service design. Peter drifts towards fundamental questions on product strategy by pointing out, with IoT, all kinds of new opportunities and alternatives start to emerge. But the real question is, what is it that we want our future products be? What kind of smart connected product would best serve as the foundation for service business? What kind of product would be a source for differentiation? Next, the meeting drills into product systems and complete solutions as a way to deliver customer value. Bob starts the discussion on systems and solutions with another strategic question. What needs to be our ecosystem play? What are the factors affecting that? Which are the products and services we consider our own, and which are the ones we are willing to partner? Sam continues Bob's thought by pointing out that competition is increasingly between systems and solutions rather than between products. More often than not, deals get decided on the merits of the total solution offered rather than on the merits of individual products. For a traditional product company, new challenges emerge. How to stay relevant and secure control points, how to ensure direct access to customers' decision makers. Bob points out one evident fact. For sure, strong service offering helps staying relevant and in control. Peter starts IoT discussion by considering digital twin applied to a system of products rather than a single product only. David takes discussion on IoT-enabled systems to the questions of architecture and product design. Isn't the fundamental question about functionality split? What needs to be in the product at customer site versus what is best to do as a cloud-based implementation? David draws meeting participants' attention to new requirements on product technology, including AI capabilities, noting that, again, it's about architecture and functional split between physical product and the cloud. Next, the meeting sinks its teeth into customer experience. Bob starts with some key observations. Services will completely change the way we interact with our customers. The customer journey will look completely different. How can we tap into the data from various touchpoints? And how to translate that into insight and strategic conclusions on portfolio and processes? Sam brings up the risk associated with customer satisfaction. Customer churn may become an issue with our new identity and offering. Some customers may not like what they see. But how can we predict customer churn? Mary takes the discussion to brand. With the new service identity, not only CX but also BX, brand experience will change. We may need to update our brand strategy. But how could we better analyze brand experience to assess the strategy updates needed? Bob generalizes Mary's point. How to overall make marketing and brand building activities into a data-driven process. In the context of customer experience and IoT, some comes back to digital twin. Wouldn't that bring an additional element to the way we interact with our customers? Wouldn't that be a natural way towards a closer cooperation? Bob continues Sam's thought by expanding the scope a bit. How can we better focus on helping our customers to succeed? What would be the key enablers beyond digital twin? Sam starts to think about usage data as a way to new upselling opportunities. How to pinpoint new customer value and translate that to sales messages. After customer experience, the meeting takes on somewhat different perspective, user experience. Bob starts. What can we learn from the way the actual users are using our product and its features? What would be the data-based insights in this case? How to utilize accumulated usage data? Peter takes a complementary perspective. What would AI-based recommendation system mean for us? Would it be possible to recommend ways to configure and operate the product or even the whole system, based on user-given performance requirements and accumulated usage data? Frank draws the attention to costs in relation to services. I'm a little concerned about needed headcount and the resulting cost structure. Could we automate some of the service tasks? Could that be based on both textual and voice interaction? David starts the discussion on IoT side of user experience. Could we utilize usage data in product design somehow? Then David considers using digital twin for UI testing well before the final product becomes available. Again, Bob is the one generalizing the idea. Would it also be possible to test service processes through some kind of digital simulation? The team proceeds now to operational efficiency side of a productivity frontier. Bob starts the discussion. Finding optimum balance between utilization rate and SLA is a key success factor for us. In other words, providing good service level but not overserving either, because that's costly. Is there a way we could analyze or even model this? On that, Sam makes a remark. I think we need to plan for different SLAs for different customers depending on the service agreement. And as before, let's take good care of our key accounts. Ollie takes an operations view. How to maximize utilization rate with preventive maintenance. Harry concludes the discussion with HR considerations. Being able to determine targeted SLA and predict utilization rate and hence resource needs would be very valuable in defining employment agreements and drafting job descriptions. Bob starts IoT theme with an idea on service design and production. We need to be able to design our service capabilities and plan and manage our service production based on reliable, accurate, and up-to-date data on the field. What are the key enablers towards this goal? Peter continues with a product angle. When it comes to products, there are two different tracks needed. One for new products and deliveries, and another for installed base. What is the new functionality that we must design for our future product launches? How about installed base? How can we retrofit them for the same level of capability? Harry voices the thoughts of many. Bob and Peter, you are asking many questions. It seems that we need to seek for answers in many places and in many business functions. But who is the party ensuring seamless total solution? Do we need a new role for this? What about our organizational structure? How we would need to change that? Next operational efficiency topic is quality and predictability. Bob starts. How to determine what creates good quality and what destroys it? And again, what are the most critical customer journey touchpoints to focus on? What is the data we need for this? We will need to systematically manage a customer experience based on this kind of new insight. Olli takes on manufacturing-related quality. How to detect and classify production anomalies and product faults. How to automate quality control in production. Bob says, the way I see it, IoT is not only about us being able to offer new services and capture more value. It is also about us delivering better quality to our customers. Being predictable and reliable is an important part of this. How do you see this? What are the key leverage points? Peter links access to usage data with product warranty. To gain access to usage data, we could use terms of warranty as leverage. But considering the service business, what would be the optimum product warranty? As the final take on productivity gains, the team looks into resource optimization. Bob starts by taking strategic view to resources. Resources and assets are there to create value for customers. It matters how we use them. It boils down to two fundamentals, doing the right things and doing things right. But how could we use data and analytics to do better? What are the more detailed questions we need to ask? Anybody willing to start? Frank says, maybe I can start. For me, the first question must be this: what business are we in? Or rather, what businesses do we want to be in? In other words, what is the right business portfolio for us? The team quickly notes that there are two very different levels in the questions. Macro level, somewhat binary questions that Frank is asking, and micro-level questions on incremental improvements. Peter continues Frank's thought. What is the optimum product portfolio for us? Soon it'll be about what is the optimum service portfolio for us. Sam joins the colleagues with similar questions. What are the market segments we should target? Who are the optimum customers within those? Harry takes the people angle. Traditionally, services have been solely about people making them happen. Going forward, it'll be critical for us to be able to utilize new technologies in our service processes. Hence, my question is, how can we use AI to make our service processes more efficient? Olli concludes the discussion by paying the attention to operational basics. Resource efficiency is in a central role in all operations. Hence, my questions would be, how to optimize materials usage, how to increase energy efficiency. When discussion turns to IoT, Olli starts with a light of excitement in his eyes. Maybe I take this one. IoT is about establishing digital chain of data alongside with the traditional value chain. In relation to manufacturing and logistics, it's about having right materials and products in the right place at the right time. Customer value add through services does not change these fundamentals. The same digital chain can be used for services and physical products alike. So, I guess that the follow-up questions would be about how to do all this in a best possible way. The team now has a rough idea on where the productivity gains lie. They got it by going through 14 technology and business intersections in total. They started with value, then discussed experience, and concluded with questions on efficiency. Time allowed only very focused handling. In the coming weeks, a deeper dive and more comprehensive discussion will be needed. But for now, the team proceeds to new areas of digital discovery. The next task for the team is to identify new capabilities needed. As in the digital discovery introduction video, capabilities are split into 4 overall categories: resources, processes, human capital, and management. The team starts with resources and assets. Bob starts with data. To become data-driven is to start treating data as a strategic asset. But what does this mean in practice? Sam provides the first response. Well, one way to think about our data needs is to split the question to customers, products, production, processes, and services. What is the data we would need from each of them? Peter continues with this. If it's data that we need, then why don't we simply think about it from access perspective? What is the internal, external, and public data that would benefit our business? Or we could use the common terminology. First-party data when referring to our own data, second-party data when referring to data from customers, and third-party data for all publicly available data and the data we could purchase from commercial data providers. Anyway, then the key question becomes, how should we organize access to all of them? What are the contractual, legal, and regulatory factors? What are the technical factors like connectivity and APIs? Frank continues by referring to IT systems as enablers. It seems that there are many areas for improvement for us to become truly data-driven. This is a good place to start assessing the investments needed. For example, what are the ERP and CRM related key improvement areas? And further, from IT systems perspective, is it the enterprise architecture as a whole that we should revisit? When the whole value creation needs to become data-driven, my hunch is that sooner or later we will need to pay attention to enterprise architecture as a strategic enabler for our total operations. David then raises questions on technology assets. When our products change, we must secure the technology needed to develop them. What kind of APIs, SDKs, and other software development tools we would need? The key question here is this. What is the total technology stack needed for the creation of new type of product? Furthermore, what are the needs on cloud computing and IoT platforms? There are many service providers in this domain, but it is us who need to decide on the functionality split between physical product and the product located in the cloud. Hence, it is for us to define the requirements for the IoT platforms and their providers. Bob launches the discussion on business processes with a reminder of the changes at hand. The way I see it, there are two kinds of new needs. First, the products are evolving towards smart connected products. That implies major changes in the end-to-end product creation process, not only in the development part, but the whole thing, including requirement management and other key product management processes. So the question would be this. What are the changes in product creation process and the related sub-processes? Second, the service creation and delivery processes we will need to launch from scratch, more or less. But how should the digital service process look like? What is the process that efficiently delivers the services for high customer experience? Peter continues by focusing on customer needs. We need to do better in tapping into customer needs and the ways to create customer value. We cannot just wait for customer requests, but we need to aim at co-creation with lead customers and at fast ways to verify assumptions with minimum viable product and proof of concept-based methods. So my question would be, how should we organize co-creation and verification? Who will take the lead in this? Frank points out that data too calls for some kind of process. Data, including access to it and its maintenance, will become core to our business. How are we going to organize data governance? What are the actions to take in order to get the house in order? Who will take the lead in this? Sam continues with this. Over the years, we have done a lot in optimizing our go-to-market practices and methods. With products, we are pretty good in doing that. But service emphasis will no doubt change go-to-market a lot. How to define new model for go-to-market with completely new value proposition and possibly new business model? Peter continues with business renewal angle. In addition, we will need to make innovation a natural part of our operations. But what would this innovation at the edge of the core business look like? How can we combine fast-moving trialing with integration and scaling with the core business? David complements Peter's point with R&D perspective. So we would need agile software development with clock speed enabling fast proof of concepts and high-quality mainstream products. But how to do this in parallel? And as a reminder, if we are to make AI an integral part of our products, we need to enable AI learning within our product creation process. Harry is fast in zooming into human resources topics. The new roles needed seem obvious. Service designers, data scientists, data engineers, and software engineers, among others. But then the actual questions emerge. What kind of teams do we need? In other words, how should we organize and manage the new skills for the best possible outcome? Peter continues where Harry left. How about agile DevOps teams combining skills from product and service design, software, cybersecurity, analytics, AI, IoT, connectivity, cloud application development, sales, and product business management? Frank, getting visibly anxious about headcount implications, interrupts Peter's long list. There must be a way for load sharing. What are the skill sets we absolutely need in-house? What can we outsource? And what would be the intermediate gap fillers we could utilize? Seems that we will need to organize multi-skilled DevOps teams, but that cannot mean that everybody needs to be in our headcount. Not at least initially. Bob goes back to management side of things. Whatever is the model for organizing the skills, we must ensure that we lead with strategic focus. It is critical that we keep the eye on the ball, so that strategic objectives do not get diluted. Bob continues with leadership angle. The change at hand is about moving from manufacturing and product emphasis towards software and services-based value creation. In addition, data and digitalization will take a central role in our business. As a traditional product company, this is a complete transformation for us. And that calls for strong change management. This is the new North Star for all of us in the company management. We need to be able to define and communicate new vision that is compelling enough to energize the whole company. And we need to be able to define new operating model that is aligned with the vision and the strategy. Bob proceeds from management to decision making. Also, we will need to change our governance practices into something that utilizes data. So the question becomes, how to make sure that data-based insight will be an ever-increasing part of our decision making. Bob then continues with thoughts on strategy execution. Our strategy should be about prioritized choices and systematic verification of assumptions, rather than random trialing and shooting from the hip. What we need is systematic, disciplined, and persistent execution. Harry ends the capabilities discussion with a general observation. This is a massive undertaking not only for our management, but for the whole company. The change will not only call for line managers to take the responsibility, but really for anybody ready to take the initiative to lead. And I bet that we won't have too many situational leaders available. Hence, we should think about incentives on leading the transformation. So, I guess my question boils down to this. How can we recognize and reward the ones rising to the occasion? As the final step, management team discusses strategic questions emerging from all the observations so far. They agree to document these as collective rather than individual questions. As with capabilities, the team splits strategic questions into four main categories. First, macro-level strategic choice will be about targeted position in the overall ecosystem and competitive landscape. Another similar choice concerns the new business model. Second, Targeted offering, that is product and service portfolio to deliver customer value, will be dependent on the choices on position and business model. Competitive profile is needed for differentiation from competing offering serving the same customer needs. That too is dependent on the previous choices. Third, data is both new and strategic at the same time. It is clear that it deserves a dedicated strategy for navigation and focus. Finally, after strategic choices, long-term success will depend on how well the company, its management and its personnel are able to create capabilities for the new game. It is here where key success factors lie. The team starts the discussion from the top: position and business model. When positioning the company in the ecosystem, that is, in the value chain and competitive landscape, there are certain factors to consider. There are other players competing for the same customers and deals. Many of them come from service-only background without own products or installed base. For a product company, it is the products and footprint they must leverage instead of drifting to head-to-head competition with established service brands like system integrators. In other words, the targeted position must be defendable. One useful test question is: what are the solutions that customers buy? Are the deals primarily about product or service point solutions, or about system deliveries and total solutions? Where are the control points? Who has the access to customer decision makers? Will this change over time with data-driven services gaining momentum? And as a good rule of thumb, avoid competing with your customers. They tend not to like it. When moving on from traditional product business, there are new options emerging with regards to business model. New earning logic need not to be based on selling or even leasing. For example, pay for use or pay for output may provide new avenues for market share capture. However, a new question emerges. Would the business model alternatives be mutually exclusive or as per customer preference? There are merits in both. Mutual exclusivity brings clarity in identity and brand. Letting customer choose brings flexibility that may sometimes get the deal. Identity and brand build on the choices on position and business model. Here the rule of thumb would be: aim for clarity and differentiation. Offering is about product and service portfolio. That is the primary method to deliver value to the customer. Obviously, offering needs to be based on targeted position and business model. However, since changing offering is costly and time-consuming, it is equally obvious that targeted position needs to build on existing portfolio. Clarity and harmony between position and portfolio are the main thing. Another portfolio-related consideration is this: what part of the customer solution needs to come from us? What should we partner? Assisting questions are: what is core? What is the source for differentiation, creates high value, provides control point? What is context? Something that customer needs but does not fulfill criteria for core. Rule of thumb: insource core, outsource context. A typical mistake to watch out: this product or service creates additional revenue. That often leads to wrong choice, that is, insourcing context. The same core versus context consideration applies to capabilities. And since offering depends on capabilities, it's good to consider them at the same time. Strategic flexibility is about realistic ability for a step change in capabilities and offering. Competitive profile is a useful way to plan and visualize differentiation. Roughly speaking, a competitive profile is a sum of customer value and customer experience. There are many sources for value and experience, and this makes designing competitive profile a bit tricky. When considering differentiation in the competitive landscape, a typical mistake is to think only about company's peer group. For example, product company thinking only about its head-to-head competitors, the players with similar products in their offering. But the analysis needs to start from customer perspective. What are all the possible ways to serve customers' needs and solve his problems? This simple question enables a long mental leap from products as point solutions to the full landscape of all possible solutions. Another key consideration in the context of differentiation and competitive profile is the question of BCRs and CAs. BCR is short for Basic Competitive Requirement. This is the entry ticket to the game. In B2B, this is how you get the RFP or request for proposal. CA is short for Competitive Advantage. That is where sources for differentiation lie. This is how the deals are won. So, differentiation is nice, but missing BCRs means that you are out of the business. And this is why technology evolution sometimes constitutes an existential risk for an established business. Finally, a useful test question is this: can we differentiate with products? If not, then CA is increasingly about services and customer experience. Why data strategy? To be data-driven. Because they say that data is the new oil. Yes, but why us? Why now? Because we need to plan and organize data-related activities, to recruit the right kind of data scientist team, to know what kind of IT systems and capabilities we need to invest in, to launch right kind of data governance and other data management activities. Yes, they are good reasons for data strategy, but clearly not sufficient. It is easy to confuse data strategy with IT-related activities, to focus on tasks but not considering strategy at all. Let's push forward. For new customer value, to launch new preventive maintenance service based on IoT and usage data. Yes, but that's what everybody else is doing too. Productivity frontier moves, but it will not take long before novelty wears out and margins are under pressure again. To differentiate from competition? Yes. The next question is perhaps the highest impact question today. How do we use data for competitive advantage? Determining the value within data builds on context. In other words, industry segment and the application within. This is where BCRs get established. After that, boosting the data value goes through customer intimacy. In other words, knowing customer processes and businesses really well. This is the potential source for competitive advantage. But the highest impact lies in innovative combinations. Combinations of first-party, second-party and third-party data. And in combinations of data, products and services. Finding the combinations does not happen through analysis like so many other tasks in strategy work. Rather, it's about innovation and facilitation of the innovation process. Innovation for competitive advantage is the essence of digital discovery. Data brings along its own set of key success factors. Something that needs to be in place for long-term success. Identification. What and where is the data we can use for value and differentiation? Access. Observing regulatory and creating contractual and technical enablers to access that data. Control. What data to open for others, what to keep for ourselves. Decision on interfaces. Governance. Taking care of the data and making it available for business. Teams. Agile cross-functional DevOps teams for emerging business challenges. Cybersecurity. Data is sensitive and trust needs to be protected. Data itself is clearly one of the most important assets. Closely related resources are about data utilization, most of all IT systems, including the ways to organize them through an architecture. Third strategic resource is about technologies and tools needed for new type of product creation. On processes side, one capability emerges before others. Updated product creation process for new types of products and for efficient go-to-market. Closely related is the capability for fast trialing utilizing proof-of-concept methods combined with scaling up and integration with the mainstream business. Third key capability would be about data management processes and methods. On human capital side, the key is to identify new skills needed and the ways to organize and manage them. New roles needed include service designer, data scientist, data engineers, and software engineer. DevOps is a good way for agile and fast-moving way to respond emerging business needs, provided that the management stays on top of things. On management side, the obvious first priority is to facilitate and organize change management for business transformation. Without that, everything else is doomed to fail. Key change management element is to recognize and reward those who are able and willing to take leadership role in the business transformation. Other key management needs relate to data-based insight in decision making. The list of needed new capabilities is extensive. Hence, it is important to consider ways to share the load. In that, it's good to start with key question. Which are the core capabilities? Those we simply need to build for ourselves. Correspondingly, which are the capabilities that we can very well outsource and partner? And finally, even with core capabilities, how could we utilize intermediate gap fillers? When assessing the long-term key success factors, it's useful to take two complementary perspectives. The internal capabilities side as just discussed. In other words, assuming that all of them are key success factors. On the external side of things, related to business environment, the key questions remain. What are the elements needed to build a defendable position in the competitive landscape? For example, what is needed for not getting marginalized by system integrators? How to create and sustain healthy margins through customer value and differentiation? 2 days after successful kickoff with the management team, Bob meets with the board of directors. He shortly describes the findings so far. Lively discussion follows. Finally, Charlie, chairman of the board, captures the board perspective in a few sentences. Data, analytics, AI, and IoT trigger a paradigm shift in our business environment. Competition is not standing still, but are placing their bets on data and services as we speak. We may not be the dinosaur, but we for sure are an incumbent. And we all know what paradigm shifts tend to do to incumbents. Hence, to protect shareholder value, business renewal is a must. This constitutes a major leadership challenge for the whole team. The transformation at hand calls for scaling up from everybody. However, all the needed support is there for you. I'm guessing that getting all the capabilities in place may call for new capital. But by getting this transformation right, I'm confident that return on investment will be good. Finally, you came up with quite a few questions. Now we need the answers. The board is there to help. Let's do this together. That's all for now. Leading Digital YouTube channel continues on these 3 themes. Digital discovery for doing the right things, systemic excellence for doing things right, leading digital framework for overall navigation. Let me know what you think. Thanks. And go Ravens!